My name is Jennifer Green-Blair, and welcome to the De-Stress Support Summit, a place where you can help support your children and families and have more fun learning tips and tricks to better cope with stress and anxiety. Hi, welcome back to the De-Stress Support Summit. I'm your host, Jennifer Green-Blair, and I'm so excited to have you here today to be able to meet a wonderful healer in this world who's helping support our children, our families, and our communities find resilience during these challenging times. So this is a follow-up from our guest panel the other evening, where we were unfortunately not able to meet with Lee Atherton, who is one of our guest panelists. So I'm very excited to have her here today to do this follow-up and learn more about her wonderful expertise and her advice on how we can best support our families, our children, our communities. So without ado, I am going to introduce you to our amazing Lee Atherton. Hello, good to have you here today.
Thank you so much. It is wonderful to be here. It's such an honor to work with people to try and bring this crazy corona world to something a little bit more peaceful.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. That is really, yeah. I'm sure you have so much to share in terms of what you've been noticing in your communities, the people that you serve. Would you like to sort of share a little bit about your story first in terms of how you got to where you are today in terms of what you do? It's such an amazing gift that
Oh,
you give to everyone. Yeah.
absolutely. It's a exciting journey that my life has been on. Um, Began when I took a job as a church secretary. Uh, Having been told that a secretary would be my career for my life. Um, I was a member of the church, had some level of faith, but nothing, we went to church every Sunday because I had kids and that's what you're supposed to do. Um, my involvement as secretary really helped my faith take root and then wings. I outgrew that job. And when I gave my notice to the board of deacons in my church, the people who oversee my role, one of the gentlemen in the group jumped up, ran over to me and said, "I am so excited that you're finally going to seminary. You're going to make a great minister." And I said, "What?" I said nothing about that. And so thinking about it in the weeks that followed, I realized, yeah, I think God is calling me to ordained ministry. And it was wonderful the way it was affirmed along the way. Uh, Graduated from seminary, had met along the way a woman who has become not only a colleague, but one of my best friends. She knew that she wanted to go into hospice ministry. And she kept saying to me, "You should go into hospice. You'd make a great hospice chaplain." No, no way. No thanks. But then after we graduated, we were both ordained. She was following her dream. She was taking a 2-month vacation, and I was in between jobs. She said, "Can you at least just cover my vacation?" And as they say, the rest is history. I spent the next 10 years, 10 to 15 years off and on in hospice because I was taking care of my dad. But yes, I became a hospice chaplain. Um, Also became a fire chaplain. And during all that time was becoming a certified life coach. And when I lost my last job was when I said, I need to bring these two worlds together and really grow what I'm doing at Coach Rev at the Crossroads. And so here I am as a end of life and a grief coach.
It's fantastic what you do. You have such a multifaceted approach to helping heal our families, our children, our communities. And um, there's often gaps, right? When we're dealing with grief, there's all different levels of grief, different reasons why we grieve. And it's so nice to know that you have that well rounded aspect of how to best manage and get through those difficult, challenging times.
Mhm.
I'm thinking right now too with COVID. I mean, there's so many layers of grief that so many people are going through, from just change, the grief of change, all the way to, God forbid, people losing family members and animals in the process of all this too. And it's
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm hoping we can speak a little bit more about that shortly. But first, in terms of just knowing a little bit about your journey in terms of going through COVID up till now, what have you noticed? Have you noticed any trends, commonalities in terms of what you're seeing? Yeah.
Yeah. So part of not an area that I focus on, but part of what I do is I officiate weddings. And so watching how COVID-19 has really impacted how couples are getting married. Um,
Interesting. Yeah.
right? You think of being the bride and growing up with your fairy tale image of what your wedding's going to look like, and then bam, all of a sudden you can only have 10 people in attendance.
Mm.
Right? How do you do that? Um, there's been a lot of disappointment, discouragement, frustration, but a lot of creativity as well, which is fun to watch. Um, the other piece is the funerals that I officiate. The same thing, we have always, all along humanity's existence, we have relied on the support of the people around us to help us get through life's tragedies. And the first funeral that I did in COVID-19, where 6 family members were allowed to gather outside, provided they were 6 feet apart from each other. Yeah. But then, so there's the huge challenges that COVID-19 has brought. But at the same time, no one had ever done a funeral by Zoom that I knew of. And now it's commonplace. I'm there, the immediate, very immediate family is there, but everyone's joining. They don't have to totally miss it. So there've been a roller coaster of trends.
So interesting. Yeah, it really is a brave new world. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
In terms of, you offer different grieving support packages and coaching sessions. Would you like to sort of speak a little bit more about that so that people know what kinds of support you can give them?
Oh, sure. So as an end of life coach, I can offer support to a person who is dying, to the phrase I use, to live their dying,
Ah,
help with being afraid, to mend relationships that might need that, or any number of things that help a person um, live the fullness that they deserve at end of life, and also to support their family, their loved ones. And then following death, I have individual coaching as well as group coaching for grief support. And then a lot of bereavement groups, which would be typical to what people are most familiar with. A bunch of us gathering together and supporting each other.
okay. That's wonderful. I feel like there's something else that you've done too recently. We'll come back to that. Yeah, I seem to think there was another program that you were working on.
Was
Uh,
that so? I do one, your val or my values, my wishes, my
that's,
dignity.
yeah, that's the one.
That's preparing. So think now while you're healthy and able to think deeply. It's scary to think about death, but so crucial to think about, what do you want when that time comes? Um, how do you want to be treated physically, emotionally, spiritually? Um, all those different ways. We never know when a crisis or a tragedy is going to hit. And it's an incredible gift to your loved ones when you can think through and make some decisions ahead of time, not just the medical aspects, but the whole fully rounded person that we all are.
So is that program designed for someone who's going through getting ready to pass, or is it something that someone can take when they're still healthy and there's no issues?
Both.
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 Okay.
So I encourage people to take the workshop and start thinking about it as soon as possible.
Okay.
I even have, I haven't yet, but have the resources to do the same workshop for teens and for younger kids.
Fascinating. Isn't that good? And you know, it's interesting because when you look at the history of how we deal with death, I mean, in the past it was, you know, back in the good old days or the hard old days, death was part of life, and it was much more commonplace for children to experience it, adults experience it. It was part of the journey, and now it's almost like we want to shield people away from it, and there's, in many ways, there's a disservice to that.
Mhm.
And do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Oh, sure. Um, so I love stories. And my story about this is that when I was 12 years old, my grandmother died. And I was hidden, sheltered from the whole thing. No conversations were held in my presence. I never went to a wake, a funeral, or anything. I just knew that the whole family was super upset, and I didn't understand why. And that was a pretty scary place to be. When I had my own children, and I was church secretary, that pastor said, start bringing your kids to wakes, introduce them when they're young. So a member of our church died. My children were under the age of 5. And we went to the wake so that it wasn't something weird for them. They didn't really know the person, just a tiny bit. And then when my oldest was 5 years old, my mom died. And we had been to enough wakes, not that we went all the time, but I had made it something normal and natural for them. And so it wasn't a scary experience. They're all adults now, and they will say that they are very thankful that I didn't shield them from it.
Powerful. It's powerful. And when we're talking about stress and anxiety and how to best cope and how to support our children, there is that aspect, right? If we shield them too much from the realities of life, then they don't know how to cope. They don't have those tools to be able to when they're faced with the reality of what happens down the road.
Right.
So, yeah. So that's that. Thank you for bringing that up. I think it's comforting to know that it's okay to have our children's experiences, obviously with certain limitations. You know, you're not going to expose them to huge trauma,
Right. Yeah.
but yeah, there's a certain way of doing that. How what suggestions could you provide to help support our children in terms of just sort of getting them comfortable in that environment?
Right. Don't be afraid to talk to them about it. You know your child best. So there are different levels that you share with each age bracket, right? Don't hide that you're upset. Go ahead and cry in front of them. Answer their questions. Kids come up with the darndest questions. Answer them as truthfully as you can. And if you don't know the answer, that's okay. Say, I just don't know. And then begin talking about it when it's out there. Like I did with my kids. We talked about it when it was someone they only knew a little bit, so that when it was their grandmother, they already were comfortable, and it wasn't their first experience wasn't a shock and traumatic.
Those are some great tips. I can, on a personal level, when I was very close to my grandfather, and I must have been 20, I think, when he passed, and it was a sudden. We knew he was dying. He was dying of cancer, but we thought he had more time. And then when he passed, I took it very hard, very hard. It put me into a state of great sadness. And yeah, and I was very far away from my support system, from my family at the time. I was at school, and I didn't take it very well at all. So so those kinds of support systems are important at any age. I mean,
Right.
yeah, yeah,
Find support out there. Your friends, they can be support, but they're possibly feeling the grief as well, your friends and family. So never hesitate to reach out to your funeral director, your spiritual leader, or even Google grief online and find a grief coach. It's important to have that safe space to share what you're feeling, to express your concerns, to ask your questions, where you don't have to worry about protecting someone you love, right? How often do we say, oh, I don't want them to know I'm upset. I don't want them to worry about me.
yeah. That's a good point.
Right?
That's what I was experiencing. Like, even though I was far away, I was trying to be strong for my mom who was going through it. So yeah, you kind of put this shield up and go, I'm fine, but you're really not. You're really sad, right? You're grieving.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good tips. Good tips. So I think if I were to summarize what you're saying is that when you're going through this, reach out for help because there are lots of resources. Am I correct in saying that? Is
Yes.
that okay?
Yep. Yep. Lots of resources, and a well-known name in the industry is Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who talks about the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. And when her book first came out, people understood it to be, this is how to grieve. And it's important for people to know that everyone grieves differently. And one person might go through those stages in that order, and another person might do it upside down in the totally opposite order. And any way you're doing it is fine.
Oh, that's really powerful. Any way you're doing it is fine.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because again, it's that self-compassion piece, isn't it? Where we're so
It
hard
is.
on ourselves and we think that
Yep.
we have to be a certain way, right?
Yeah.
Put the mask on, get through
Right.
it.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, some wise words.
Mm.
I'm also curious about um there's when you talk about different stages of grief, there's also different kinds of grief. Maybe we can speak to that a little bit more in terms of what people might be going through right now with COVID. Uh,
Right. So often when we hear the term grief, we think someone has had a person that they've loved die. But grief is so much more than that. Um, for many people, myself included, our pets are our family. So when you lose your pet, you might go through the same intensity of grief as someone whose mom or dad died, and that's okay. There's grief, especially in COVID-19, around the loss of so much: loss of jobs, loss of financial security, loss of homes, but also the loss of community, which is huge. Humans are made to be tribal. We are tribal entities and we need to be with our people. And not only are we isolated from friends, often from coworkers as well, but even from our family, those who are closest to us. So the grief is on many, many different levels, many different areas, and more people grieving than at any time in our history.
wow.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. What does that look like on an energetic level when you're having a whole bunch of people that are in that state of mind and sentiment? Yeah.
Yeah. The energy. That's a good question. I find that people's energy has definitely decreased, um, across the board in a lot of ways. When people come together, um, there's a heaviness in the air. that I look at, and I see grief. And I try and bring and encourage others to bring, where do you find the hope in the midst of it all? What can you reach for? And try and take off some of that weight. We all have backpacks with big boulders in them. Let's lay some of them aside.
I love that analogy. Take off some of those boulders, get rid of them.
Yes.
It really, it doesn't serve. Right? If we're going to hold on to that grief, and we're going to hold on to often with grief too, don't you find that people have there's a sense of guilt, like we take on, we self-loathe, I guess is the word that comes to mind. We internalize it, and yeah, it's not healthy.
We're not kind to ourselves.
Right? Yeah.
It's okay to grieve. And it's grieving and going through that process doesn't mean that you stop loving what you've lost. And if you don't allow yourself to grieve, you know, a lot of people just stuff their feelings, and grief is easy, not easy to stuff, but society suggests we stuff our grief because we are a death-denying society and people are afraid of it, right? If you do that, it's going to come back to bite you. And often in more life-upsetting ways than if you just allow yourself that space and that time.
Very wise words. I'm also I'm thinking of it on a biological level, spiritual, physical level. Yeah, if we hold on to that grief, I mean, there's science that says that, you know, if you're storing negative energy, if you're storing negative emotion, it gets stored in your body. And over time, it can lead to illness. It can lead to depression, right? That mental illness piece. It's not serving us.
Right.
And yeah, so tips, suggestions on how we can sort of get rid of those boulders in our packsack. Do you have? I'm sure you've got lots.
Yes, it's remind yourself that it's okay to grieve. Take care of yourself. Self-care is not a 4-letter word. It's 8 letters. It's okay. And never hesitate to reach out. And there are so many ways that you can do that. I have something people can subscribe to, 365 Days of Grief Support. And it's a daily email. And in there, I offer tips. If you're feeling like today is a really heavy day, how about pick up the phone and call a friend and just go out for a cup of tea.
Awesome.
Or call someone and say, I'm having a hard day today. Can you give me a hug? Even if it's a virtual hug. Even those simple little things can make a difference instead of just keeping yourself in isolation.
Oh, those are some great tips. Excuse me. And also living in a space of gratitude. Don't you find that so key?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Maybe we can speak to a little bit about that in terms of the importance of being grateful despite what we might be going through. The power of gratitude.
Yeah. It's so huge. So huge. When you're in the depths, right? You mentioned depression, you know, so this can be in anyone's life, whether they're grieving or not, having overwhelm. Take a minute to just stop and name 2 or 3 things right then and there that you are grateful for. And it changes. You find yourself sitting up a little straighter, right? Just think about something other than the overwhelm and the negative. I do a funny thing every night when I go to bed. I start with the alphabet and I go through, all right, something that's A that I'm grateful for today. And it's really fun. You can make it a game, right? And it changes your mindset and gives you a different perspective. Not that it's easy all the time. You know, when you're having one of those really, really difficult days and everything looks ugly all around you, finding that glimmer might not be so easy. But when you've practiced it beforehand, it starts to become second nature.
Oh, some great advice. It goes back to also the whole aspect of practicing resiliency and the mindfulness practice. So if we incorporate these simple strategies throughout the day and incorporate it into our lifestyle, make it part of who we are, when we do come across these huge challenges and in our lives where we are experiencing grief, we are more resilient because we've practiced that muscle, right? And so being grateful, practicing that state of gratitude as a state of being can help us be so much more resilient when we're faced with these really big challenges. Am I correct in saying that?
You are, and that's a fantastic analogy, the muscle of resilience, because we all know, you know, if you work out, you're going to be less winded when you run the race, and it is the same for our emotional well-being.
What a gift to be able to give to our children, right? To teach them these tools. I love the alphabet skill that you have. Yeah, the alphabet gratitude game. I love it.
Yeah, there are only so many items that begin with the letter X, right?
Yeah. And if we speak a different language, that can be challenging. Yeah, I've had a lot of fun. I love it. I love it. Yeah. And then tying that into maybe even journaling. Maybe we can speak to that. Some people like to write their emotions out on paper. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Absolutely. A lot of people think journaling is hard to do and that there's a right way to do it. But if you just sit down with a piece of paper and a pen or pencil and just whatever's on your mind, start writing, you're the only one who's going to read it unless you give it to someone else, right? And there's something about that process of just, doesn't have to make sense even. It doesn't have to be complete sentences that help our minds work through some of the stress that we're under, work through some of the challenges that we're facing. It allows us to connect with the other side of our brain in a way that just lets ideas come out, solutions flow.
Yeah. That's empowering, isn't it? When you're feeling overwhelmed and you're wanting a sense, if you can find a way to focus on one thing that you have some kind of control over, make a world of difference.
Yeah.
I love that idea. I mean, all of a sudden, if you're starting to write your emotions out, it gives you clarity, it gives you focus, it gives you something you can actually do in the moment to bring you back to that mindfulness, that moment of peace, right? That moment of, okay, now I can handle this. Even if it's for 2 seconds, I'm doing this. And then you go on to the next 2 seconds. And then eventually, one step forward. And then you get through that dark feeling. Yeah.
You make me think of my favorite quote. It's by Nietzsche, a great philosopher. It's only when there's chaos within that you can give birth to a shining star. Isn't that true in our universe? That there's got to be that mayhem before a literal star is born. And to remember that in the midst of our life's chaos and crises and upheavals, that there will be a star that is born out of what you're going through.
My goodness, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Very powerful. I love that. I got the imagery of a beautiful star all around. And I mean, if we can support each other in community, how amazing this world can be. I mean, we can look at COVID in such a negative light, but if we can turn it and look at a different perspective, we have an opportunity right now to use these great strategies and unite as a global community and help support each other through the challenges and and uplift each other to do some incredible healing on this planet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's such an opportunity for us to, as a human family, to show our fullest, most incredible potential. Yeah. It's exciting. It's a really, truly exciting time if we really take advantage of it in a positive way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That word perspective makes such a difference, doesn't it?
Yeah.
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 I'm curious about you're offering a wonderful gift for our community. Would you like to share what that is?
The gift, yes, coaching.
Coaching. Let's go, Coach Red.
Yes. So anyone who'd like to reach out and be supported, I'm offering a free coaching session. It's just schedule it when it's convenient, and it doesn't have to be about grief. Can be about anything at all.
As I'm sure people can see, you have such a light about you, and such you're just lovely to be around with, and even on Zoom, it comes across in such a lovely way. Your energy, your healing energy is just so contagious, and yeah, what a gift.
Uh,
Thank you for sharing that with our community. We so appreciate that.
Absolutely. Any little bit I can do.
Oh, and that's why we're so grateful that you're here. You're just such a light in the world, and it's going to help so many people. Yeah.
I have to say, it takes one to know one, Jennifer.
Oh,
Yeah.
I just love this community. We're
Yes.
just so supportive. I just love it. I'm so excited too about our future plans, because I'm hoping that you can come back and we can revisit the different areas of how we can support our community in terms of just the challenges that the daily challenges people face. Because
I'm
you have
so
so much,
excited.
yeah, because you have
Yeah.
so much to offer in terms of just, just the general steps of how to get through, even just the basics, right? Just
Yeah.
sometimes people are stuck with a particular issue.
Right?
And
Yeah.
you can serve with that as well, right? As you said, it's not just grief that you deal with. You also deal with just helping families get through the daily stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So true.
Uh, Before we end too, I also wanted to just talk about your your thoughts on children, moms and dads, in terms of how they can help support their children, just with how children might be going through the stress and the grief of not being able to be in their social environment right now. Any quick suggestions on that? Because a lot of kids are experiencing that.
A lot of kids are experiencing it. I think just letting them know you understand. I feel the same way because I don't see the people I used to see at work every day. And then try and brainstorm with them, how can we do something different? It's when we let kids know that what they're feeling is okay, and we feel it too, and let's be in this together, and try and find a way to do something different that helps ease it a little bit.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
And I love your energy again. It just,
Thank you.
yeah, you just bring such joy to it. And it's lovely. and that's what it's about, right? I mean, knowing that it's okay when we go through challenging times, to know that it's okay to sit with that, because that's part of life's journey.
Uh-huh.
And then knowing that we will get through, if we are reaching out, that we don't want to keep it and internalize it.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
It's community.
So Coach Rev is a wonderful solution to that. And we're going to make sure that we have a link to your resources so that we can best support the community. And We look forward to seeing you again so that we can explore this a lot further with our future programming. And I so honor and appreciate all that you offer our
Thank
world.
you as well. Thank you so much.
Thank
Be
you.
well, everyone.
And Coach Rev has not been feeling well, and she came here specifically today to be able to help us out. So I honor that too. Thank you so much for not feeling so good and still stepping up and helping everyone. It's just, again, another testimony to how amazing you are and what a light you are in this world. So thank you.
Thank you.